Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Peace and blessings be upon you. Thank you so much for the messages some of you sent me inquiring about my well being during the time I was absent. Alhamdulillah, I am well and I am here to give you some updates as to what was happening with me, only because I know that, or I hope at least, that inshallah, these reflections can help you during your own experiences and for your own spiritual growth. And yeah, the reality is that during the months I wasn't posting, I was being tested. And well, we're all tested, obviously, as we know. Allah tells us that in Quran, but some tests are bigger than others and requires us to see things differently. It requires us to do things differently and to do things or think in ways that perhaps we never thought before or we never did before. That's why it is a divine pause. It is a moment of integration of new experiences to form a new version of ourselves that inshallah it's more pleasing to Allah and more beneficial to humanity. So, there were a few lessons I needed to experience before I could be here with you again. And as always, Alhamdulillah, the designs of the test Allah gives us are always perfect. They are never random. They are precisely measured for what our soul needs at any given time. Even when our earthly self feels overwhelmed or confused, our soul is actually rejoicing because it knows deep down that this challenge or this situation has come to free it from another chain that our earthly self has wrapped around it. And as we know, our chains are made out of fear, doubt, illusions, delusions, attachments, and it is our duty on this path to use every day of our lives to seek how to break those chains that keeps us tied to other than Allah, of course. So, in my experience, um, what happened to me, well, there were different tests, but let me start with the very first one, which happened on June 28th. I won't forget the date. And before I get into it, I just want to say that, when we read a lot of the blessed teachings of our sheikhs and on the Sufi path, we hear the word and we see a lot the concept of spiritual powers. And we are taught that on this path, Allah will certainly give us spiritual powers, spiritual support, the more we purify ourselves. So I just want to kind of give you an example of how this looks like. And I'm sure perhaps some of you already experience it or might experience it. And how this type of what we know as spiritual powers are nothing magical, as in, like, they shouldn't be treated as something extraordinary. They are gifts, yes, certainly. They are gifts from Allah, but they are a logical cause and consequence from being on this path. All of us that are interested on the spiritual path, we of course know that the unseen world is there, is present, and we basically need to bridge the gap between this material world and the spiritual world. And as we know, that looks very differently for many people. A lot of people get lost in the spiritual path when they cannot ground the teachings in their day-to-day life, and they just stay in a state of illusion, just thinking of the unseen, but not bringing anything of much value into their day to day, because in their day to day they're still in a lot of pain, in a lot of entanglement in with their own chains. So just know that the Sufi path, and of course Islam as a whole, is meant to free us from our chains. It's never you're we're never supposed to seek any sort of spiritual power or a spiritual ascension or upgrade if we don't want to use that to address our own wounds first and foremost. So that day, June 28th, I was walking on the street with a family member. We were going to the masjid, to the mosque, and suddenly we see a friend of my family member, and the encounter lasted no more than 2 minutes. I was being introduced to this friend. I have heard of them, but I never met them physically. So I was being introduced, and that's it. Then we all, went our own way. But during the introduction, like that moment where the three of us were standing there and I was being introduced, I was starting I was starting to be given knowledge. I don't know how else to call it, but yeah, it was as if I was able to feel and to understand and to know what was being transmitted between them two as I was there. And this information, mind you, it wasn't something that just concerned them, it was concerning me as well. So now I understand that that's why Allah, in His infinite mercy, allowed this uncovering for me to see. And it was very disorienting for me. I had never really experienced anything like that before, to be honest with you. I had never been in a situation where I am there standing with someone or with people, and I'm able to know with certainty what is in their hearts regarding each other and myself, and the three of us involved. So I knew I had to do something with this information, and that's why Allah gave it to me. Now, Alhamdulillah, thanks to being on this path, I understood that there's always a higher way of dealing with a situation, and there's always a lower way. If we react from our wounds, if we react from our insecurities and from fear, things will not get better. Things will not really work out when we react from those places. But Alhamdulillah, I knew for a fact, because again, it's that yaqeen, it's that certainty we feel in the heart, that I knew Allah had granted me that knowledge, because He was testing me to see if I could use all the tools and all the all the practices and everything I post about, if I can use that to transform this situation into something beautiful and something that benefits all the parties involved. So I did that. I mean, of course, it wasn't quick. I didn't know how to address this. It required me to go really outside of my comfort zone when it comes to speaking up and basically, yeah, addressing situations that make me uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, this situation was not only affecting me, it was also causing some harm to the parties involved. So that's why I felt really it was like a duty to address it in the most gentle and the most merciful way I could find as a human being. So, Alhamdulillah, it worked out. All I can tell you is that it was a process. It did shake me a lot. That's why I really didn't know what to do with this. So, there were some sleepless nights. There were Days I wasn't hungry, I didn't know what to do. I was constantly thinking, how can I do this? And Alhamdulillah, Allah always guides us when we want to address something and behave for the greatest good of everyone involved. So that was one. Second experience I was faced with, rather given the gift and the opportunity to work with, was I had a I had a very scary experience while flying in 2021. Before that, flying for me was very common. I used to fly a lot, because, again, my home country is Mexico, and I lived in Canada, US, so I would travel a lot. And before that, I was never scared really of flying. Not much, rather, like it wouldn't stop me from flying. But in 2021, something happened that really stopped me from flying the years after that until this year, where again I felt Allah was giving me a cue to tell me, okay, you are ready to fly again. And I again didn't know what to do with that. I was like, no, I don't think so. Given all these excuses. And of course, I had to ground myself. As I always say, we cannot be connected to the spiritual world and spiritual teachings when we're not really grounded. And by grounded, I mean we need to know how to apply these teachings in our day to day life. They cannot just stay as concepts and we continue to live our life from fear or from anger, from heartbreak. No, we need to mobilize that energy and transform it. This is the path of alchemy. The Sufi path is the path of alchemizing and transforming the emotions that do not serve us, they don't serve our highest good, they don't serve our path to Allah, so we can start living more free. Remember, the message of Islam, of true Islam, has always been to free ourselves. Because when we surrender to Allah, we are free. That's the true meaning of freedom. So I decided to trust Allah. I was like, okay, Allah, I am afraid, but I'm gonna do this because I feel you are telling me to do it, so I'm gonna do it. Um, I did it before boarding the plane. I was feeling so many emotions between being terrified, between excitement, between like I cry for a bit and then I kind of laugh for a bit. Like I was feeling a lot, but I was like, Allah is with me and this is gonna be okay. So Alhamdulillah, it went really well. I used that experience to reprogram my mind and remember that one negative experience doesn't mean it's gonna repeat or it's gonna happen again and again. So that was another one. And then after that experience, I was given many others that would address my fear of being seen. So I do have a full time job where, Alhamdulillah, it's beautiful in the sense that I get challenged a lot to grow. And of course, it's never easy. But during this particular time, Allah was asking me to address the fear of being seen and the fear of feeling very inadequate or like a failure. And let me tell you where this comes from. So of course I grew up in an environment that was very controlling. Anything I did was never enough. So growing up, I heard a lot of messages of no, this is not good enough, or you're not smart enough, you're not capable enough, you cannot do this, or all those messages that don't help us. And at the end, it all translated to to hearing, that voice in the background that keeps us limited, that would keep telling me, no, what you do is not good enough. If you cannot do it perfectly, then you are a failure, and you should have known more by now, and you should know this better by now. And all of this should haves, and we all have those, right? So Allah was asking me to address those. And as you know, it's not from one day to the other that you decide to let those go. But yeah, one day I was just like, okay, let's say if I was being asked something at work that was challenging for me. Let's say it was to lead a meeting. I mean, I'm considered an introvert. So in the past I would say, oh no, I'm an introvert. No, I cannot do it. I don't want to do it. And I would just keep being in my comfort zone. But no, one day I decided, okay, no, Allah is giving me cues that He's sending divine support my way to do this. So if I got some invitation to, oh, can you do this? Can you lead a meeting, or can you prepare this, or whatever? Instead of saying no like before, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And in the process, Allah sent many people my way from work or from other sources that were giving me always words that Allah knew I needed to hear at any given time. So, as you know, all of this does take um, determination to choose to trust Allah. And all of this came from the fact that I used to feel safe by not being seen. And I'm sure many of you perhaps identify with this. Like somewhere in my subconscious mind, I was like, oh no, if I stay small, if I stay quiet, I'm safe. And for each of us, it's going to be different. But at the end of the day, we cannot really fulfill the mission Allah has given us in this life if we keep holding on to this type of beliefs and ideas, because safety doesn't come from staying small or quiet or things like that. Safety comes from trusting Allah, and from trusting that we need to keep moving in this life, to evolve, to purify our hearts from these are attachments. This type of fears are attachments, and our ego will always use those to distract us from the path. So I do have much more to say, but not enough time at the moment. Inshallah, I will definitely continue. Thank you so much if you made it this far. I'm praying for you, and inshallah, we'll speak soon.